Welcome back to Ready Set College, your 30-minute destination for college knowledge each and every week. We're here with Jeff Morrow, the Director of College Counseling at Oaks Christian. Jeff, welcome back.
Thank you, Rob. It's good to be here.
We spent the first half of our show talking about sort of levels of religiosity within colleges and universities, and Jeff was really great about laying out four basic levels that each family should really consider within understanding how colleges have an organization of religion within their influence. We want to now spend the next segment talking about those latter two, those that are self-selecting and those that are also self-selecting with a denominational focus. So we're going to go ahead and put up a slide on the screen, and it'll help families, I think, understand and debunk this idea of is this school self-selecting or is it not?
And I think, too, you made a great point at the end of the last segment, Rob, the idea that I think so many times students miss opportunities by dismissing a school based on what they perceive to be an affiliation, knowing that if they would just give that school a chance, they'd recognize that all kinds of students are comfortable there for all kinds of reasons. And so it's important to kind of look deeper into this rather than what that official affiliation might be. And I think it's also important to define what we mean by self-selecting. So self-selecting is the idea that the school is very open about what they are looking for. Most colleges are not so open about what they're looking for, because if they were open about what they were looking for, they would discourage students from giving them their life's blood, which is applications.
And money.
That's exactly right. So most schools are not self-selecting. It's the idea of looking at an application and seeing the things that are required of me and automatically saying, yeah, that's not me. That's not what I'm looking for. So we want to spend a little bit of time talking about what does it mean to be self-selecting from a religious standpoint. And here's some indicators that you can look for. The first one being that in the application to the school, does the school require a statement of faith? So do they require to write about what it is that you believe? And is it in line with what they believe? Another way to see it, do they require something like a testimony? The idea of saying, okay, how did I come to believe this? What is my specific story? That's the first way. The second way may be, does the school have maybe a statement of belief saying, we as a community believe these specific things. Do you believe these things too? So they're asking you, and then you would either sign that statement of faith or affirm that in some way. The third way would be, does the school require a pastoral recommendation or recommendation from clergy? So does your priest write you a letter of recommendation? Does your youth pastor write you a letter of recommendation? Does your confirmation teacher write you a letter of recommendation? And is that required as part of the application process? And then the fourth way, and maybe even the biggest indicator, is that is there any kind of requirement of faith for the faculty? Because as you look at a school, the faculty at that school are going to have so much to do with your point of view and what you're talking about and the conversations that you're having. So a great way to see if a school is self-selecting is if there's a requirement of their faculty, whether it's signing a statement of faith as well, or being from a certain denomination or a certain faith background at least.
So what would you say is the best way for a family to begin the process of trying to debunk this list and make better sense of what are they trying to identify and how can they find it in your travels?
Mm-hmm. I think you can start before you leave your house. So the idea of looking at that application, or at least starting with, the school should have on its website a history, its own story, its own testimony, I guess, of why they are. And so you start there. And then you start with that idea of looking at the application. And if they're on the Common App, look at the supplement. Because the supplement is where it'll be. You can't have a self-selecting app element to the Common App essay, because that defeats the whole purpose of the Common App.
Exactly.
But you'll find it in the supplement. So start there. And then once you do that, when you head out, then you can start to look for these other things, the conversations. And you can see it in terms of saying, well, what percentage of this student body self-identify as being of a specific religious denomination, and what group of students don't identify at all? And that will give you a sense of the culture. And I think the smaller the school is, the more one culture can dominate.
With the last minute we have in this segment, I want to bring things back to California if I could.
Sure.
Just kind of riffing off the schools that you know well within our own state, how would you just very briefly describe, say, the 10 or 12 that come to mind that you would find are somewhat too significantly religiously based?
I think it's important to start with the places that really kind of identify with a specific denomination. Point Loma Nazarene University. So you can tell. I mean, that one's a little easier to spot because the denominational affiliation is right there in the name. The N stands for Nazarene. That's not always true because the denomination is right in the name for SMU as well. But I think that's one that comes to mind. California Baptist University, another that you can crack that code pretty easily. Point Loma, we talked about, is a little different in the way that they approach it. However, I think you also have to include Azusa Pacific in that. I think it's probably important to include Westmont College in Santa Barbara in that as well. I think you should probably include Biola in that list. San Diego Christian goes in that list. And then I think you also find places, say, like Pepperdine, in a little different spot on that list, but still distinctly Christian in kind of their mission, just not self-selecting. Does that help?
That makes sense. It's certainly a great starting point for our families. So we've got one more segment with Jeff Morrow, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Ready, Set, College. Stay right there.